In this video, we're going to look at multiple alleles, and specifically, we're going to look at the example of blood types. So far, we've looked at crosses involving traits with only two alleles, right? It was tall or short, it was green or yellow. There are only two options. But many genes have more than two alleles, in other words, multiple alleles. And an example of multiple alleles occurs in human blood types. So, in order to determine someone's blood type, there are three alleles. There's an A allele, a B allele, and an O allele. And they're denoted capital I with a superscript A, capital I with a superscript B, and a lowercase I. So, the A allele and the B allele, because they are uppercase, so that means they're dominant over the little I, which is the O allele. And then the way that the A and B alleles are written tells you that they are codominant. So alleles A and B are expressed equally when they are present, that they are both dominant over the O allele. So each person has two out of the three alleles. So there are four different blood types. So if your blood type is A, then your genotype is either going to be homozygous for A, so IAIA, or you're heterozygous for A, IA with the small I. If your blood type is B, then again, you can either be homozygous for the B allele or heterozygous for the B allele with an O allele. If your blood type is AB, that means that your genotype is IAIB, the two codominant alleles. And finally, if your blood type is O, then your genotype is the homozygous recessive, the little I, little I. So let's look at an example. If a woman has blood type AB and a man has blood type A, what possible blood types will their children have? So the first step, we need to figure out what the genotypes of the parents are. So the mother has blood type AB, so there's only one possible genotype, and that's IAIB. The father with blood type A can either be homozygous or heterozygous. So IAIA or IA little I. So in order to determine the possible blood types for their children, we're going to need to do two crosses. We cross the mother, the AB, with the homozygous father, and we cross the mother with the heterozygous father. So cross number one, if the father is homozygous, so the father can give only an A allele, the mother can give either an A or a B. So when we fill in the Punnett square, we see that there's a 50% chance that a child will have type A blood and a 50% chance that they'd have type AB. So that's the one situation. If the father is heterozygous, which means he can give either an A allele or an O allele, which is the little I, and again, the mother is an A and a B. So we fill in this Punnett square, and in this case, there is a 50% chance of type A, right? So either homozygous A or heterozygous A. There's a 25% of AB and a 25% chance of B. So in this situation, the only way to get a type B blood type in the child is if the father is heterozygous. So if this couple happened to have a child with type B blood, then you would know that the father is heterozygous. Whereas if they have a child with type A or AB, then you still wouldn't be able to tell what the genotype of the father was. So now let's actually talk about what blood types, how they work, what they mean. So the allele that you have determines the antigens that are present on your red blood cells. So an antigen is anything that causes an immune response. So your immune system is looking for antigens around your body, and when it finds them, it causes an immune response. So here are the different blood types. So if you have blood type A, it means your red blood cells have A antigens. If you have blood type B, they have B antigens. If you have blood type AB, it means you have both types of antigens. And if you have blood type O, you don't have any antigens on your red blood cells. The other thing that happens is you get antibodies in your bloodstream that recognize and bind to the antigen that you don't have. So if we look at that, so what that means is if you have type A blood, you've got A antigens on the surface of your red blood cells, but then you've got antibodies against B in your blood. Similarly, if you have B blood type, you've got B antigens, but you have antibodies against A. If you have AB blood, it means you have both A and B antigens, and you have no antibodies for the blood type antigens. And then finally, if you have O type blood, you have no antigens on your red blood cells, but you've got both types of antibodies. So the thing about these antibodies is that they recognize whatever antigen they're programmed to recognize, and they trigger that for destruction by the immune system. So this is why when you need to be given blood, you can only be given certain types. So as an example, if you have type A blood, you can't be given any blood that has B antigens because you have B antibodies. So if you're given blood with B antigens, so if you're given type B blood or AB blood, those antibodies in your bloodstream are going to attack and kill the new red blood cells. And that's just going to make you more sick and not going to help you. So if you have type A blood, you can't get type B or AB blood because your anti-B antibodies will destroy it. If you have type B blood, you can't have type A or AB because your anti-A antibodies will fight and destroy them. People with type AB blood are called universal recipients. They have no antibodies, so they can get any type of blood. They can have A or B or AB or O because they have no antibodies. They're not going to fight against anything. Whereas people with type O blood are called universal donors because their red blood cells have no antigens, so they can be given to anyone. However, people with type O blood can only be given type O blood because if they're given any of the other types of blood, their antibodies will mark them for destruction. Okay, so that's the basis of blood types and how that impacts when you're requiring a blood transfusion.